What's up guys, Aiden here for Civic Minded. Today I am going to show you how to make your Civic do this. So a little bit of background for those who don't know. The 9th gen Civic was available with turn signal mirrors, however, they were only available on the 2012 and 2013 Hybrid. None of the other 9th gen Civics got them. If you're looking to add turn signal mirrors to your 9th gen Civic, there are a few different ways you can do it. First, you can do what I did here with pretty much any trim in any year. Second, if your Civic does not have LaneWatch, so that's any model year LX and 2012-2013 non-hybrid, you can replace the entire mirror housing assembly with one from either the 2012-2013 hybrid or an aftermarket one that has a turn signal. So we're going to kind of do this mod in two acts, so to speak. First, we're going to make the mirror sandwich shown earlier in the video, which you may or may not need to do depending on how you're doing this mod. And second, we're going to run the wiring in the car. We're going to run it through the door, well, into the mirror housing, through the door, into the cabin near the footwells for the driver and front passenger, and then finally into the fender, tying into the turn signal wire for the front turn signal bulb. One word of note, if you decide to employ the mirror sandwich method I did, your stock glass more than likely has an opaque back, so you won't be able to put a light behind it and have it work. Instead, you'll need to get aftermarket glass. I'll leave part numbers up on screen. Do not use K-Source glass. It is not as good. It's good for replacement of glass, obviously, but it's not as transparent as Berco glass, which is what I use in this video. You can check your glass by holding it up to a kitchen light or your phone light or something like that. Make sure a lot passes through. If most of it is blocked like it is here, then you need new glass. Alright, so that said, let's get to it. First thing we need to do is remove the stock glass from the mirror. Simply move the mirror all the way to the left on the left side and to the right on the right side, all the way up, and then you will see two latches on the bottom. Get a flat blade screwdriver or a non-barring pry tool. Get it under there, use it to release those latches, pull the mirror out. Note that that adhesive can be really strong if your mirrors are brand new, and it can crack the glass, so just something to be aware of. But once those are unclipped and you're off your adhesive, there are two hooks that hold the mirror in. Simply pull the mirror out from there, and if you have heated mirrors, simply unplug the heating element, shown right there. Now we need to separate both the glass and the heating element, if you are so equipped, from the backing plate of the mirror. Don't worry, we're not deleting the heated mirror feature. If you have that, you won't lose it. So what you want to do is get a heat gun or hairdryer or something like that, heat up the surface of the glass on the mirror, and then use something like a little iFixit knife or a credit card. Do not use a flathead screwdriver. You will break your mirror, as you might see shards of evidence on the table. Use that to break the adhesive holding the mirror. You'll see as soon as you start getting in there. And it may help to pull the backing plate off as opposed to pulling the glass off the backing plate, because the backing plate is plastic and bendable versus the glass, which will crack if you bend it too much, so yeah. Heating element comes off a similar way. You probably don't need to use heat for that because it's already been weakened by the glass heat. Another important note, don't leave the heat gun in one place for a long time because you will melt the plastic on the mirror backing plate. Now with that off, next step is to get the mirror backing plate as squeaky clean as humanly possible. Use rubbing alcohol and a microfiber towel, and it'll come out looking just like that. Now it's time to get the signal on the new mirror glass, and in order to get it straight, what you want to do is hold the old mirror glass against the new mirror glass, or the new mirror glass against the old mirror glass. You'll see the old mirror glass has a perpendicular line that should be perpendicular with the ground under normal circumstances for the convex area. If you turn the old mirror around, you'll notice that that line has an indent in the back of sorts. So you can slide the old mirror off your new mirror, making sure not to scratch your new mirror, and then just use that line for reference for how you should mount the bottom of your turn signal so that they're perpendicular. Just like that. And then once you secure the signal with electrical tape, you can put the old mirror aside. Next, if you have heated mirrors, we need to add the heating element back. And for that, we are going to use these little heating pads here. I got these on eBay. And a piece of tin foil to spread the heat a bit more evenly. And you'll notice I soldered the heating pads together to get the resistance of the new setup pretty close to the old setup. The old setup was 50 ohms, this is 40, so they're 20 ohms a piece. First, you'll want to cut a piece of tin foil about the size of the exposed area on the glass, leaving space for mounting points on the sides, of course. Use electrician's tape to secure the top and bottom of the aluminum foil to the mirror glass. Then put the heating elements on the aluminum foil and secure the sides of both the heating pads and the aluminum foil to the mirror glass with electrical tape. And before we put everything together, I would recommend that you go ahead and test the signal and heater. You can do this with your car battery, or as you can see, one of these AC adapters works. The light works, and to test the heater, you can use either the palm of your hand. It should feel pretty warm around the entire tinfoil area, or one of these ear thermometers if it has a contact-free mode. Now we need to get the mirror glass back adhered to the mirror backing plate. So for that, I used Scotch Mount double-sided mounting tape, the indoor-outdoor variety. I got this at Lowe's. It wasn't that expensive. You could also use molding tape, but I didn't find that to hold as well. And I would place the adhesive in quote-unquote strategic locations. So like on the edge there, on the upper and lower portions, as you can see there. I also ended up putting one on that empty side there. And then it's literally just a matter of mashing the entire thing together until it sticks. And now you might be able to see that there's a bit of a gap there, so we need to plug it up so no moisture gets in there. And for that, we are going to use good old silicone caulk. And what you want to do there, and unfortunately I didn't get it on camera, but what you want to do is put the nozzle on a low setting so it's a small bead, and just try to get one continuous bead around the perimeter of the mirror, just like that. If you get any silicone on the front of the mirror, clean it off with a microfiber towel and rubbing alcohol, because that's very hard to get off once it hardens, so be careful. Also note that you may need to touch it up a bit if there's any holes in the silicone. And be sure to hold it with a paper towel while you're cleaning it so you don't accidentally smear new silicone on the glass. And once your new mirror sandwich is all sealed up, go ahead and crimp connectors onto each wire. I'll show you what to crimp onto the signal wires later in the video, but on the heater wires, use these. I couldn't find these at an auto parts store. I got these at an electronics store called Altex. 0.110 is the size you need there, so yeah, that's what fits the OEM wiring. So now you're officially done with your mirror, yay. Don't put it back on the car just yet, because we're gonna have to take the body out and run wires through it, and that's gonna be easier with the glass off. But before we start working on the inside of the car, you're gonna have the door open, so first make sure you can open it all the way. And second, make sure you turn both your map light, if it has a switch, and your center dome light that was on. Turn your center dome light off. Otherwise, you will kill the battery. Ask me how I know that. So there are 2 screws and a bunch of clips holding the door panel on. The first screw is behind this little trap door in the door handle. It's like a little battery cover almost. Remove that as you would a battery cover. There's a Phillips head screw in there. Then remove your window switches, get a little non-barring pry tool under there, pull up, they come out, unplug them as needed. And then there's another Phillips head screw in there. Remove those both. Then get your pry tool between the door panel and the door frame around where the puddle light would be, so bottom of the door. Just pry out, and then you can use your hands to pry the rest of the door panel off. Lift it off the windowsill, and then set it aside. You'll be treated to this lovely sight here, and while we're in here, why don't we take the speaker out, because we're eventually going to need to have it out to run wiring through the door hose. So, it is held on by a single bolt and 2 clips on the bottom, so remove the bolt, it's a 5/16 or 8mm. Then pull up on the speaker to separate it from the 2 clips. It may be a bit tricky to get out the first time, I know mine was. And then finally remove the electrical connector, squeeze the side of it, and pull it out. That was also a bit tricky, and note that that connector opens really easily, so just be mindful of that. Now we need to remove the vapor barrier. Needless to say, make sure both your window and your door are dry if it's been raining recently, as it was when I shot this. So remove that little rubber grommet there, and then you can just simply peel back the vapor barrier just like that. Wear gloves because the vapor barrier adhesive is pretty nasty stuff. That gives us access to this blue connector here. That's the mirror power. Unplug it. And that'll also give you access to this clip on the wiring harness that holds it onto the door frame. Unclip that as well. Just squeeze it, push it in. Then we can do the fun job of taking the mirror off the car, which, yes, you need to do regardless of whether you're wiring into your existing mirror body or putting a new one on. The mirror body is held on by 3 10mm nuts. Use an extension to get in there, just loosen all 3 of them. Don't worry, it's held in by a clip as well, but do not drop those nuts because they're very hard to retrieve. Once those are out, go ahead and reconnect your window switches and roll your window down so you can grab the mirror as it falls. There is, as I mentioned previously, there's a black tab in there, just push that down. Support the mirror with the other hand, and it'll come out. And that's that. If you're replacing your entire mirror assembly with one with a turn signal, that's probably all you need to do. Just put the new mirror on, put the nuts back, tighten them. But if you're replacing the glass, as I am, you need to do some more stuff. So we now need to run wires into the mirror housing, and to do that, first we need to take off the painted housing on the back of the mirror. It is held on by 6 clips. Get a flat blade screwdriver, push the tabs in, and it'll come out. Be careful not to break any of them. as I did. We're also going to need to remove the mirror base piece cover, I guess we'll call it. And that is held on by first this piece of tape here. Just peel it off and unwrap it around the wiring harness. We're going to reuse it, so make sure it stays sticky. And then there's a tiny Phillips head screw. Just remove that, pry up on the edge, and it'll come out. And that gives us easy access to pull wires through the mirror housing and into the tube. So from here, just try to, I would say, start in the mirror cavity, so to speak, and just fish your wires through. You're going to be running two of them, one for power, one for ground. From the start of the cavity, you're going to push the wires through, I guess, that little stub there, I guess it's called. And then from there, you can actually pull them into the plastic tubing that the connector attaches to and just pull them out through there and rewrap with electrician's tape. And once you're done with that, cut the wires so that they're at a decent length inside the cavity, and you can go ahead and reattach your glass. Then you're going to want to go ahead and crimp connectors on. These are the ones I picked. I got it at AutoZone. Pretty much anything will work for that, just as long as it's insulated. And then from there, we can remount the mirror and reinstall the glass, and we're done with that. So now we have what I thought was the hardest part of the job, and that was running the wire through the door into the cabin. And for that, we need to remove the hose that covers the wires that go into the car, so we can slip our new wires through that. There are two connectors between the factory wires and the car. There is clearance between them, so you can slip your wires through there. It's already really tight in there, so I'm not sure I would try to crimp it and put it into one of the unused spaces in the connector, if they even are any. I couldn't even see that. But in order to get access to that, we first need to remove, depending on which side of the car you're on, we need to remove either this infamous piece of trim on the driver's side or the glove box on the passenger side. You don't need to take the glove box all the way out, you just need to drop it. But on the driver's side, you know what to do. Just get a pry tool onto the edge there. Don't try to pull it because it will break. Instead, just pry it out. And there are a series of clips that hold it in all the way around. Set that aside once it's out. Also, don't forget to unplug whatever buttons are plugged into yours. Next thing we got to take out is these black plastic pieces that go along the door edges. On the driver's side, there is a screw that holds this in directly under the trunk lock key. It's just a Phillips head, loosen that, and then pull up. On the passenger side, you can just pull up. Just FYI, you will pull up on the trunk release latch when you pull that piece up, so just make sure it can move freely, i.e. the trunk is unlocked. Next thing that needs to come out is this little corner kick panel, and to do that, pull back on the weather stripping like this, and then there's just one clip holding it in the back, so yank it out. So for access to this wiring harness on the passenger side, you're going to want to open and empty your glove box. Then you're going to want to squeeze each side of it. You're going to see there's like a little rubber stopper here that keeps it from falling out. But you're just going to want to squeeze those. You see those little stoppers. Let it hang. And this is where your cabin air filter is, by the way. And then you see the wires I ran in there. That's what you want. So now to get the door hose open, you're going to want to stick something like a flathead screwdriver or a pry tool in between the door hose rubber and the actual body panel. I'd recommend a pry tool so you don't remove any paint. You'll see there's a little notch there. There's a tab inside that notch there that you need to depress, and then pry the plastic housing out with your tool. And then you can, with your fingers or pliers, separate the rubber hose from the pegs on that plastic housing and get them all off so you can peel the tubing back. The end of this hose inside the door is much easier. It's only held on by a little grommet. Just squeeze it, push it through outside the door, it'll come out. Almost forgot. Before you push it out, just unclip the wiring harness inside the door. There's just two clips holding it on, just like that, and then it'll come out. And then from there, just try to straighten it out so you have an easier time getting wires through it. And I think the strategy I used here was to start pushing the wire through the top of that hose, and then pull it out through the bottom and into the door, and then it's easy from there. I pushed it through the little plastic housing you saw earlier, pulled it out into the footwell, and let it hang just like that. That seemed to work pretty well. Once again, remember you'll be pulling two wires through and not just one. And once they're through, just run them along the wiring harness that's in the door already, just to make sure it clears the window. And then from there, you can just crimp whatever connectors you're using, connect it to the wiring that's going into the mirror, put the vapor barrier back up, and push the lower grommet back in on the door hose. Then you can reinstall your speaker, put your door panel back on, and you are done with what I thought was the hardest part of this job. Yay! To reconnect your pegs, use the same strategy with the tool to remove the plastic housing, and then you can just use pliers, your fingers, whatever, tweezers, to slip the rubber back over the pegs. Do it for the side closest to you, that is the side facing the open door. We'll do the other side in the next part of the video. So now we need to do the last wire run for this mod, and that is from the inside of the cabin where we just ran the door wire to the turn signal, the front turn signal, which lives underneath the fender liner. So to do that, first thing we need to do is lift the car and remove the wheel. The lug nuts are 3/4 of an inch. If you don't know how to take a wheel off a car, Chris Fix has an awesome video on how to do it. I will leave it in the upper right hand corner. And to get access to the wire and grommet we want, we first need to take off this fender liner splash shield here. There are a total of 10 clips that hold it on, plus 1 clip on the bumper cover and 1 10mm bolt on the little kick panel that you would take out to change a fog light bulb. And once you have the necessary ones off, you can just fold your fender liner down like that. Here are the locations of those 10 clips for reference with the wheel off. Note that they are rather fragile, so if you do happen to break one, the replacements are super cheap at Advance Auto. Here's the part you need. So before we do any wiring under here, I think the first thing we should do is fix the other side of that rubber hose on the door, which is accessed through the fender liner. You see this black piece of plastic here? You can remove it by pulling out a grommet on the bottom, or what looks like a grommet. Pulling the plastic up, you see those two latches there, and then just pulling it straight out, and you'll have access to the hose. And once in there, you can employ the same screwdriver trick as you did on the other side. Hold the plastic housing out and use pliers or your fingers. I'd recommend pliers to put the rubber over the pegs, just like that. So now we're gonna go ahead and start the actual wire run. As you can see, there is a grommet there, right on the body. Just push that, it'll fall somewhere in the cabin, retrieve it. That's where you're gonna be fishing wires through. There is the hole in question, so what you're gonna wanna do here is you're gonna wanna put your wire spool on the floor, and you only need to run 1 wire this time. You don't need to run a ground, and I'll show you why later. But put your wire spools on the ground, fish your first wire through that hole, pull it out on the other side, and then pull it the length of the fender all the way to the turn signal. Then you're gonna wanna temporarily secure it with electrical tape to get the proper length for the wire tube you're gonna have to run around it. As you can see, I secured mine to the little ledge there, so it's out of the way of any wheels, and it'll be completely covered by the fender liner. So once you have a length that you're happy with, go ahead and remove all pieces of tape except the one closest to the hole that passes into the cabin. You can slip the wire tubing over the wire now. You can hold the tubing to the side of the wire. Whatever you can do to make the tubing the same length of the wire with a little bit on the ends. And once you have that, cut the tubing, slip it over the wire, wrap it in electrical tape, and then you can use this aluminum tape to secure it. I wouldn't secure it with electrical tape just because that's not particularly good with grease, but this aluminum tape works perfectly, as you can see there. Now coming back inside the car, cut the wire you just ran to length. Then you'll want to pierce a tiny hole in your grommet. Use either something like a dental pick or a jewelry pliers. That's what I used. Then you're going to want to push the wire through that grommet from the outside side so that you would be pushing it into the car. Reinstall the grommet from inside the car, and then plug the hole up with silicone so it stays watertight. Then from there, we can crimp connectors onto that wire, so our positive side is now fully connected. And then to attach the ground, you can just crimp a ring connector onto the ground wire and attach it to this factory ground here. Note, do not turn your car on with this bolt off because weird things will happen, as I found out, like your wipers will run, all sorts of weird stuff. And now all our wire runs are done, so before we splice into the turn signal wire in the front, I would definitely recommend that you test the signal, not only to make sure that it works, but to make sure that if your front turn signal happens to burn out on that side, your alert system still works, so the signal still flashes rapidly. And to do that, you just want to unplug your turn signal in the front, stick the wire you just ran into the slot for the turn signal wire, which on the left side of the car, it's blue, on the right side of the car, it's brown. Then you can turn your turn signal on as normal and look for that rapid flash. If you got it, it's working and you can go ahead and splice. Splicing is relatively straightforward. You're going to want to remove the plastic tubing from around the turn signal wiring harness, remove the turn signal wire from that harness. It's the blue one on the left side, the brown one on the right side. If that happens to be different, it might be different in different countries, just whichever one is not the same on both sides, that's the turn signal wire. And like with any splice, you'll just cut the wire, put the new wire in, and I use butt connectors for this, and I accidentally used my last outside one. I broke it, so I had to use an inside one coated with silicone. Whatever method you choose, make sure it's watertight, add silicone as needed. You can solder, use butt connectors, whatever. Then you can slip the plastic tubing over the 2 wires that you haven't modified, wrap the entire thing with electrical tape, reconnect the wiring harness to the turn signal bulb, and you are all done. You can go ahead and put the wheel back on, lower the car, wheel lug nuts get torqued to 80 foot-pounds regardless of trim. And that's pretty much what we're left with. Long mod, great result. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment, shoot me a message, leave a video response, and I will close with, as always, drive safe, have fun, and I'll see you in the next one. Just like that, and you can let it hang, and oh, hi, I don't know where those came from.